when we started out our companies, they say it's like youth, right? Youth is like wasted on the young. When you're young and you're a new business owner, you can't afford to have all of these coaches and folks. So you kind of have to muddle through it for a while until you can get some traction. Then you can afford the coaches to take you to the next level.
Today, I am joined by Raffi Jamgotchian, CEO of Triada Networks. For 15 years, he is a member of the U.S. Secret Service Cyber Fraud Task Force, the New York chapter of the FBI's InfraGard, president of the CompTIA Cybersecurity Community, a CompTIA ISO subject matter expert, and a member of my own company's advisory board. He is loved and admired by all and many technology and community circles. Welcome, Raffi.
Thanks, Marc. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. It's been a little bit since we've been in touch as far as in person, but we get to see each other a little bit on video. So it's always fun to see and talk and share. My understanding, Raffi, is recently you went on a vacation. Where'd you go?
I did. It was a family vacation of the adults, if you want to call it that. My wife's side of the family, it was my father-in-law's 90th birthday. And so we went to Punta Cana for a week, enjoyed it with them as well as my wife's brother and sister and their spouses. It was a good time.
Very nice.
Can't complain about the weather there.
I was curious what the weather was like, but it sounds like it sounded probably amazing.
It was perfect. It was
a Midwest winter
week. Yeah, right. 80s all week. We skipped one snowstorm. The boys had to shovel themselves out on their own, but it was a good time.
Very cool. Very cool. So definitely someplace I've never been, but sounds like someplace I need to visit.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. So it's Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. Typical fairly poor country in the Caribbean, but Punta Cana, this little mini resort town that they've practically built walls around, and as long as you stay in the resort, very safe. They have their excursions and stuff that you can go. We're not really excursion people, at least my wife and I aren't. So we like the beach, we like to kind of chill, and we like to kind of do our own thing. The food was pretty good. Can't complain about that. It was nice. The weather was great. The music was great. So
wonderful. What was one thing, one takeaway or one highlight of that trip for you?
One highlight. So I would say, look, I didn't gain as much weight as I thought I might. I was being very careful, as much as you can with kind of like the all you can eat scenario. I didn't drink either. We're not really big drinkers anyway. The drinks are so watered down in these all you can eat resorts anyway that you have to drink so much to feel the effects. I love the fruit every day. It was pineapple and passion fruit and then even like dry figs and oatmeal and like all sorts of stuff. That was really kind of a fantastic thing that we don't do as much as we probably should here. Seasonally, it's a little bit harder to get certain fruits, even though you can get them anywhere. But it's people talk about organic this, organic that with that, and we try to eat well here. But in these other countries, especially, it's like they're growing it there. It's as organic as it's going to get, right? So it's like. There's no just farm to table is like, tree to table. It's kind of what's happening. So that was, I would definitely say from that end, it was that part of it was a highlight. But just being with family that we get along with and that we enjoy each other's company was really nice.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. And in fruits, love me some fruit, especially pineapple. Goodness, definitely love some pineapple in my life. I know that's one thing. I'm also looking for many things of traveling to the Philippines later this year, but the fresh food is something I'm looking forward to.
Yes, very much.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, great. And I know just so let everyone else know and kind of here is being fully transparent. Raffi and you and I have a relationship. We've known each other for, I think, roughly about 10 years now,
right.
I believe. Kind of going back, I was trying to put a date to it. You and I have been peer group members with a couple different organizations over the years, and you've been on my advisory board for many of those. So professionally, that's kind of our tie, being in the technology world. But take me on your journey. Let's go back in time, right? When you talk about you today, you're the founder and CEO of Triada Networks. For 15 years, which is very impressive. Congratulations on that. But, let's go back to before Triada became Triada.
How far back do you want me to go?
In your career, let's go back. Let's go back. I read some interesting things in your bio, back to where, young Raffi was doing things with BBSs. And I remember those days. Walk me through some of that.
So
that sounds.
My hair is gray enough that I can talk about these things. So like I had one of the things, my dad was in computers. When we came to United States, I was 3 years old. My dad had just graduated, finished his schooling and got a job as a computer programmer. He studied statistics. There's no such thing as computer science back then in the early 70s. So I was exposed to computers really, really early. We had like a mini computer in the garage, took up half the garage, that I used to go out there in the cold and write basic programs and kind of learn on it. I had a TI 99 computer. That we did a speech synthesis thing that my dad had got. So we'd play around with speech synthesis, definitely not the current like AI voices that you can do, but it was very cool at the time. And my dad had instilled me at the time that computers are not for games. Gaming machines are for games. And so the computer was not used for, I had to sneak and go buy a joystick for my Apple II to play games because, it wasn't allowed. And that was my childhood. It was very kind of unusual, I think. We were one of the few people that had a computer on our block. That slowly changed over time. And then, when I was in high school, because, as nerds do, I had a teenage phone line, which is like tied to your main line, but it's like another phone line in your bedroom that I use for myself. Of course, instead of using it to talk to kids, which is probably what I should have been doing, I hooked my computer up to it and I started a BBS. And so me and a couple friends started a BBS. We ran it for a couple of years. It was very successful. We had, probably 1,000 or so people that would dial in at any given time, random times. We only had one line at a time. So it was only one person. And we write stories, we trade stuff, we trade, information. And it was very cool. It was an interesting getting to understand what an online community is like. And some of us did meet up in real life. But it was, that my love of computers was kind of all born from that internal thing. I was interested in other stuff. Like I was interested in political science. I was interested in, I was drawing. I wanted to be a comic book artist, like all those things.
Wow.
But, my dad said, do what you know. And I went and studied computer engineering. Then after college, I did some engineering work for a little while and then eventually landed in IT. I never thought I'd be in IT. In fact, I was fighting against getting an IT job, but
why is that?
Yeah, you know what? It was like I studied. It's one of these like old fashioned, maybe. You got your degree in a thing. You should be doing that thing, right? So I studied computer and systems engineering. I should have been creating circuit boards and whatever. And when the engineering company I worked for, a company called Crestron, they create like touch screens and control systems for boardrooms. So like AV, automation and things like that. So high-end homes, like big corporate centers. And I was doing a lot of the big things there. They wanted me to go into the engineering group. That was my path there. I was actually more interested in kind of the big picture stuff, like kind of trying to figure out how do all these things fit together to make this cohesive. And they blocked me from going in that direction. So we weren't making a lot of money as a couple. At that point, I was married. I married right after college, and we wanted to start a family. And IT gave us the commercials so that we can start a family. I had a couple friends that were encouraging me. You should look at this. You should look at this. You should look at an IT career. You'd be really good at it. Computers. I knew nothing about networking. Like I knew nothing about any of that stuff. I knew how to, work and program a PC. Like I didn't know anything else. And I was thrown into the corporate world and, fast forward, here we are.
So a couple things. First, we said, talk about the controllers and being blocked from going in kind of the direction you wanted. What time frame, where were we at as far as time frame?
So that was, so I started that job right out of college. It was 1993. I worked there for almost 2 years. It was 95. I remember because I had just left my job, and it was during the Oklahoma City bombing. So I think that was April 95. I distinctly remember that kind of event. And originally it was going to be a programming job. It ended up being an IT infrastructure job in the city for one of the companies that I had done some work with through the control system company, through Crestron. They hired me as a guy. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to this. I know computers, but I don't know what networking. He's like, you'll learn. You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. And that's what I did. I rebuilt their entire automation platform for doing their overnight processing, whatever. It was a finance company. And then, we had to come in really early in the morning to make sure everything ran and get ready for the trading day. And so by automating all this stuff and then creating, I started writing software to page us when things went wrong. We didn't have any of this stuff in place. This is 95, 96 now. That allowed, Ray, my counterpart, and I to sleep, instead of having to show up and work 16 hours, we were able to kind of adjust our schedules because we now had something that kind of monitored things for us. And so I essentially, I understood that myself as being kind of functionally lazy. Like I didn't like to do repetitive tasks. And so I wanted the computer to do these repetitive tasks for me. And so tell me when something goes wrong so that I can go react to it. But, or if you can't fix it, but, don't keep asking me to do something over and over again. So we started like building these things that, did things for us and told us when, things went not, and that allowed us with this tiny team. There was only 4 of us in the infrastructure group. It was like the head guy who didn't really, do anything other than order stuff. Our boss, again, he was the guy who knew kind of the networks mostly. And then Ray and I. And so Ray and I were help desk, scripting. I was doing the DBA work. I learned how to run a Sybase database. We had a VAC system that we run part of our processes on. So like we were doing, the 2 of us were kind of running everything. So the more that we could automate, the more we can go out and actually do kind of interesting things rather than trying to figure out, what went wrong. And so that just kind of, that part of it, that automation, and maintenance, automatic maintenance really was one of the, things that really, affected me in terms of going forward within IT. And so as we grew the team, we kept these things in place and we were allowed to do, made more and more interesting things. So that was a kind of a cool thing about, I kind of took my systems background, I guess I would say, and kind of injected it into what we were doing in IT infrastructure. And along the way, I learned networking and a couple other things. So it was kind of neat. So, yeah.
No, very cool. Very cool. So in that automation piece, is that something that, I guess, is that something you're doing in silence? Is that something that was an open topic within the organization? I mean, obviously to spend that time to do those things, you had the backing of your superior.
Yeah, I definitely had the backing of my superior. In fact, he kind of expected it. He said, "All right, you have a programming background. You're probably gonna want to do some things here, and you know, have at it." And so I would show him what we were doing. He liked it, you know, and he was a bit of the company was, you know, for an investment firm. It's weird. Like I always end up in these investment firms that were, I don't want to say tightwads, but they were really tight with money. And maybe that's how they made their money. They didn't really see us as like a real resource. They looked at us as a cost center. And so who did, you know, when you can tell that when the CIO or the CTO reports to the financial officer. And so when we had to do anything, we went through that, those kind of checks and balances and what have you. So anywhere we can save money, you know, that was looked at as a positive way. And so, and headcount was obviously the biggest thing when it comes to what we did. Eventually, we had to grow the team because the company grew. The infrastructure became a lot more complex. We started out with, you know, 3 network servers, and then we had this, you know, big, you know, Windows server farm after a couple of years. So that was, you know, after. So think about this. Like I started at this company in 95. That's when the World Wide Web was just starting out, right? 95, 96 is when, 94 is when Amazon came out and eBay. You know, this is just the beginnings of the internet. And so we were just connecting the company to that process. Up to that point, their connectivity was only with their other offices and the market data services that they use, like Bloomberg and what have you. And so that whole thing just kind of revolutionized itself in those next, I would say, 3, 4, 5 years up until about 2000. So it was a really interesting time to work at a company that was going through this massive change culturally as well as technologically, and because of that, we had to grow the team to accommodate for that.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure there was exciting times. You know, once again, trying to go back and trying to think where was I at that time and what was going on in my life and as far as the technology and excitement. But I didn't get to experience what you were experiencing. So you were definitely in a much deeper situation, I guess, in the technology world at that time than I was. And very cool. Very cool. So the step back, you mentioned something in there and we kind of blew by it, but you talked about at the age of 3. At the age of 3, tell me what happened to you.
Oh, so I was born in London. At the age of 3, we came to the United States. By then, my grandparents were here. And so my dad came into, you know, when he came to the States, we all came to the States. His first job was with ABC, the TV company, as a COBOL programmer. And so on the weekends, he would actually take me in and, you know, prop me up on, while he was doing his work, he'd prop me up on one of his green screen terminals, and they had a light pen. I don't know if you remember light pens, but it was kind of
I don't.
Other than the keyboard, it was like, there was no mice. This is the early, you would actually like poke at the screen and the light would read the screen and kind of identify where you were. And so I would play games with that little thing. So that's kind of how, that was my first, so I was exposed really early to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you said at the age of 3, from London to the US, was it the job that brought your family to the US? What was the push there?
Yeah. So where my parents were, my parents were both born in Lebanon. We're Armenian, through various migrations, through world events, Armenian genocide. My parents were ended up born in Beirut. There's a large Armenian population in Beirut. In the 70s, Beirut became kind of a problem area. There were a lot of issues, and it wasn't great for Christians to be there at the time. And so at that point, my dad had left to go to college. My mom followed. They got married in London then. while he was at school. And then that's when I came along. But meanwhile, during kind of this of this turmoil, my grandparents left Beirut and came to the States. My grandfather's brother was already here in Boston. My grandfather came in and settled in New Jersey, where his daughter was. And because of that, after college, since my parents didn't really have anybody to come back to in Beirut, my mom's side had family still there. They decided to come to the States rather than go back to Lebanon or stay in London. So that was kind of the impetus of why we came to the U.S. at that point.
Wonderful. So most of your immediate family was in the U.S. at that time? Yeah,
most of my dad's side of the family were in the U.S. at that time. My mom's side of the family came over a few years after that. So at that point, almost our entire family on both sides were either in the New York, New Jersey area or in Canada.
Okay. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Yeah. I mean, obviously, at least relatively close, right? No one ended up on the West Coast.
Yeah, no, we always, so cause it's funny because like there's a big Armenian population in LA. So we always expected that at some point we would migrate out that way. But yeah, that never happened to us. Thankfully, I like it here. I like the seasons, other than fire and mud that they have on the West Coast. We have snow and rain.
Even though we might complain about the seasons when we're in that season, but it just kind of does have that variety.
Yep. Yeah, so that's how we ended up here, and it's funny because like Armenians, my grandfather was a tailor. Most of our families were like in the we had family in the rug business and this and that. Armenians tend to be like they were traditionally like they become mechanics or jewelers. That's kind of like the stereotype. We have so many computer guys, and on my side of the family, especially on my dad's side, my dad's brother, his first cousin, myself, two of my cousins. Like we like kind of like it changed the trajectory of like where our family was going. But yeah, so
very interesting.
Yeah,
no doubt. And then you have children of your own, correct?
I do.
Yeah, and how many?
4 boys.
4 boys.
4 boys. Yeah.
And what I guess in their life and education, where are they headed? Are they following dad's footsteps in the technology world, or are they kind of go be a tailor?
Some of them are, yeah. Some of them are. One is firmly he's working for IT in an IT role at an investment firm. Another is working as a software engineer in an investment firm. The third is a mechanical engineer, so not quite, but still in the engineering field. And my youngest is currently studying financial technology in college. So I would say definitely more technical, certainly definitely technical types of jobs and careers. Not probably other than my oldest, which is probably closestly aligned to what I've done. That's been the thing. They grew up in a house that this is what Dad talked about and did. And I started Triada in 2000. They grew up with it just like I did. We always had stuff in the house that they play with. There's a picture of my oldest in at the office in Invesco. This giant compact computer sitting on my desk, typing away. When I was, building a computer at home, he's gotten his fingers in there. So cool. They've been around it for so long. And when I started Triada in 2008, my oldest was, 12. So it was like, so they were all young, right. And they saw us kind of build this up since then.
And is that, I guess, for you, is that the kind of path that you would hope for your children, or is that you'd hope for other things for them?
So my wife came from a family of business owners. I came from a family of business owners. My dad was a freelance computer consultant since we came to the country, and he's been there since. He still works. My dad still works for an investment firm as a COBOL programmer, believe it or not. and my mom was a business owner too. So we always, I didn't know that would have been, business ownership would have been in my path, but it kind of naturally became that way. And my wife and I both knew that, that's kind of like there's a couple ways to be successful in America. And it's really through ownership, whether that's ownership of homes, or it's ownership of businesses, whether that's through, say, stock market or direct ownership of small businesses. We felt that was our path. So take the skill that you have and build a business around it, with the idea that because to potentially turn something into multi-generational, that whether it becomes that or not, we didn't want to necessarily say, hey, you have to join the family business. But that we're not like the Corleones that way, but we wanted to give them the opportunity that if they wanted to step into the family business, they could, or if they wanted to, if at the end of my years, this asset became something that they could turn around and sell and do something with that they can build off of, that would also be okay. So those are the things that we wanted to build, something that actually had that kind of longevity, as opposed to, and I'm not knocking it, if I continued down the corporate ladder, one, I probably would have had better income along the way, but when you leave, other than what you've socked away for your retirement, that's all you have.
Right.
And that's that was the, part of that is like, all right, so I'm giving up that maybe some of the salary, but I'm gaining a certain amount of freedom, and be, building some sort of asset that can have some value at the end of the day.
Sure. I would say we could go into that, those few statements, quite deep, actually. I don't know that we'll touch on that at the moment, but yeah, just thinking about those things going, yes, I understand. We all can, as business owners, consider to go, hey, like, maybe I'd be farther ahead if I would have stuck with a corporate job or whatever, right? Like going,
sure.
There's a little bit of a gamble there. Obviously, being an entrepreneur is not I say for the faint of heart. There's risks involved, and those we know that we choose and take those. And I know that myself, is often reflect and go, wow, was that the right thing? Once again, same mentality. You're building this way. Like I believe you're creating this asset, right? Building the business, building it up, and someday, you make that exit. So
yeah, you have your days.
Yes.
Certainly, and I've had my days thinking of like what to do with what we're planning on, and we decided to, looking back now, it's at some point you kind of have like a point of no return, right? So you're saying like, all right, do I still have? My wife and I were talking about this the other day. If the boys took over and you stepped away, what would you do? And could you go and get a job? And I'm like, maybe. I don't know. Like, there's some places that probably would hire me, like within our own kind of world. But that corporate leadership or that corporate job, that I don't know if that door is still open to us. We probably have some marketable skills that we could bring to the table for that kind of place. Mm-hmm. But if somebody was trying to like hire me as like a high-end engineer or practitioner in an enterprise, like I've been out of the enterprise world for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. So that's a harder sell, I think, sure. When you're looking at it. But maybe, who knows?
Maybe I kind of believe that. I don't know that. Yeah, I could be hired. I don't know. I think I'm past that phase, right? Like going, I would do something else. I don't think I would get there, right? Like it just, unless it's saying, welcome to Walmart. I don't know that there's much else that I. They're like, nope. But once again, we've been doing that. We've been at this long enough that I truly believe that, I wouldn't be a good employee at that point anymore. There's just,
and I'm not, I would say that, but I also think that if somebody was to look at us at that point, that's probably the kind of person that they want. They probably want the person that is not going to be, quote unquote, a good employee. They're going to be one that's going to say, you're like, I guess I look back and maybe this is a bad example.
Bring it.
When, I'm going to, because I'm kind of a political junkie, I'll use a political example.
Go right ahead.
When George W. Bush was about to run for president, he was looked at as kind of like this young guy that made a lot of mistakes in his youth. He had his issues with substances and what have you. And because of that, they thought that we didn't have that kind of like foundation. And for better or for worse, that's why he brought on Dick Cheney. They used the word gravitas a lot. I just remember that word kept being said over and over again when he was running. And that's what he brought to the table. Right. So, and I think folks like us, the graybeards of the world, there's even a place for us there when, maybe in an advisory capacity, whatever it is, that when the young guys are, and we know technology is partly a young man's game, that as these guys start up, I wish I had that kind of person that I could have leveraged off of. I knew, Lord knows, when I started in 2008, I had the exposure of my parents as business owners, but not really in the sense that like I was in their books and understood kind of how money flowed through the business. And certainly the money flowing through a consulting business that was basically, whatever came in is what went into your pocket, versus my mom's business, which was a hair salon, where the money flowing through a hair salon completely different than what we do. And so, with very basic financial knowledge that I gained when I, went for my MBA while I was in corporate, that was basically what I went on, and I learned business kind of that way. And probably if I had that kind of mentor, advisor, something like that at that time, I probably would have been further along quicker than I was. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think
now you made me think about that. Yeah, I think in the sense that you're right. I think they bring value to the table with that alone, and shortcut. Because as we talk about, even with, I've got some coaches in my life, and there's a reason for that, right? Now, and do I have things that are broken that need fixed? But there's also things that they can provide me that I don't have to learn the hard way. Right. It takes time.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the, like when we started out our companies, they say it's like youth, right? Youth is like wasted on the young. When you're young, and you're a new business owner, you can't afford to have all of these coaches and folks. So you kind of have to muddle through it for a while until you can get some traction. Then you can afford the coaches to take you to the next level. And I think my mistake was waiting too long for that to happen before I can. Like, I would expose myself to pundits and groups and things like that. But I don't think I exposed myself to really good, solid one-on-one coaching until much, much later in my business than I should have.
Yeah. No. And so for you, and since we kind of went there with the coaching aspect and introducing that and introducing people that been there, done that, and give outside views and opinions, what today do you think has made the biggest impact for you? And what element were you, as far as what were you lacking that you feel that an individual coming in a coaching role has helped you with the most?
So I'm gonna actually take that in a different direction. Okay. What happened was which I have a tendency to do. I made the pendulum swing too far.
Okay.
And I had too many of these voices in my ear at one point. And so because of that, I think we went from not really knowing what to do to a whole bunch of people telling what we should be doing, but not being able to focus on any one of those or any one tactic. And it took me a while to build my own filter to say, all right, I still like the concept of having all of these different concepts and ideas, but I'm going to pick the parts that resonate with me and move with it. I don't know if that was a great idea, but at least allowed me to kind of quiet the noise in my head a little bit until I can narrow it. And I'm still on that process. Okay. That journey still hasn't finished, and narrowing the voices in my head. And I think finally where the biggest impact, wherever I made my biggest impact in my company along the way, has always been through I think peers, but guided peers. Okay. So the peer relationship, but with some additional structure and guidance, where I think just sitting in a room with a bunch of peers wasn't cutting it. But when we had some structure and around that, that definitely did. We, for the longest time, 14 years, I've been doing my own books. It was between myself and my wife. We started looking at and I hired a bookkeeper. They made a mess of things. And so I could have easily said, well, forget this, I'm going to go back. But I knew it was the right thing to continue finding the right, company to work with. And now I settled on it. So now I believe I have the right company, because not only are they just doing the books, but they're actually, because they know our business well, they worked at companies like ours. They understand what we go through, that they can give me advice on saying, all right, here are some areas that you may want to think about pulling back on or investing in or what have you, and give us the kind of the intelligence we need to actually make more informed decisions. Whereas in the past, we would make decisions by, right from the hip, or just by, looking at bank statements and trying to figure things out. I think I have a better handle. It took me a while, better handle on my numbers than I had in the past. Again, work in progress. And also, as you know, I have a tendency to use a lot of things and buy a lot of things. We have that. Some of us have this shiny object syndrome problem. I'm in that, shiny object syndrome anonymous grouping for sure. I stand in front of the room and protest that. And that has also, I believe in the past, has held us back. Not because we were spending a lot on these things, that's certainly part of it, but more because we kept switching things. And so, whereas at the end of the day, software is built by humans, those humans are still, they work within the certain parameters, and they're flawed. And what happens is that they all stink to some extent. They're not all there's no perfect product out there. And in search of this elusive perfect product, you waste a lot of switching costs.
Sure.
And I think that's something that I didn't account for as much when early on. Now that I've been in business for a while, and the pain of switching is more evident, it's now come to the point where it's got to be really bad for me to have to make a decision. If it's something that is going to be a painful switch, then I'm not going to do it unless it's really going to be, it's really causing us a lot of pain. What was my point here? My point was that with the shiny object stuff, we're trying to get better at that as well, to kind of keep out the the stuff that comes at us. And with technology, it's hard because it's so evolving at such a rapid pace. Cybersecurity obviously has been a big thing. It's been part of our DNA from the beginning, but that world and what's available to us now as small and medium business owner providers is so much greater than it was even when we started 10, 15 years ago. Now we're going to have this whole new wave with regards to AI, whether it's AI enabled products that we already have or new products that are AI enabled, and perhaps even things that are, say, like, we're going to get rid of the old way of doing these things because now we have this AI enablement. And then I think that we're about to hit that new place of new shiny stuff coming around the corner. And I'm trying to prepare myself to say, like, all right, I'm going to take a step back and evaluate a little bit differently than maybe I did in the past.
Yeah. So even though you talk about the shiny object, but yes, I know that I've been guilty of it a few times as well. It does happen to the best of us. Especially, I guess, when I look at it, it's not only, it's the time, energy, and money we spend. We could have been focusing elsewhere.
Yeah.
And if we do that enough, it's like going, geez, like what value did it really bring?
Right. Exactly.
I'd have been okay with my first whatever, RMM and continued on. I'm just using that as one example. But, prior to, you talked about the coaching and influences and
Marc, I'm using the same RMM I started with.
See,
but I changed it 5 times in between.
Yeah. See, I mean, you circled back. It's a big circle. You're back there again. So the influences, and you're right, you can't have too many influences in your life, too much noise to sort through. And you're right, by picking something, narrowing it down to 1, 2, and focusing on those, right? Especially in today with technology and everything's out there. There's so much noise, so much influence. There's so many people you could listen to. And for every aspect of your life.
It's actually getting worse, not better. We have this new wave of new people who are basically entered our market and are trying to garner our attention. You still have the traditional groups and pundits, and then now you have these new ones that are coming out, and that's kind of a trick. That's a tricky situation for me because it's FOMO is real in terms of like, oh, maybe I should be listening. Oh, these other people that I really trust are listening to this guy. Maybe I should be doing it too. And that's gotten me caught even when I've done more due diligence and ask people questions, whatever, like, what your experience is. Like, okay, but are they doing other things already? If they are, then maybe I don't need to listen to X, Y, and Z. Some of the stuff you eventually get to, it may take you a little bit. I know this is counterintuitive from what we were talking about. Maybe it takes you a little bit longer listening to somebody else, but eventually, I think unless like you're in like some weird cult, you're going to get to the same place, and maybe with less stress. And maybe that's something we don't talk enough about is the stress that we put ourselves through. You were talking about not only the cost of switching, but that time lost. That's massive. That's a massive thing. There are certain things that are easier to switch out, and for sure. But there's some parts of our business that's really difficult and very painful. And we've done those a few times. And they're becoming more and more painful, dude. Like I'm really, it's interesting. Like I'm really, at one point I'm saying this, but I know like the thing that is probably the most painful thing to change in our company, I believe I'm going to have to make that change in the next, let's say 8 to 12 months, because perhaps my thought process is that product that I'm currently using is potentially end of life. And so if that company, and because that company has multiple versions of this same product and the others are more advanced. So are they going to continue to develop both? At some point, I can't imagine that they would. So I can probably, until they turn it off, I could probably keep using it, but is that going to be to my benefit? And so now it's, do I think about that now, or do I say, all right, we'll wait until later
when that happens, right? Then worry about it, right? Like,
yeah. Or unless there's a real compelling need for us to move. And what I've because now I have this financial coach in my corner, I turn to him and say, look, because this is more of a financial question, not money saved or money paid. I don't mean financial in that way, but the way that the way our books are structured and what have you. Can we do what we need to do with what we have today? And if we can, then let's ride it out as long as we can, instead of making that switch. Because I know that switch is going to be a lot more painful. Because in the past, when I've made that change, I only had maybe a dozen contracts, a couple of different things, really simple, smaller staff or no staff. And now it's a different story.
So here's some dates. No. You're all good. So Triada Networks, 2008. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay.
So walk me. You had this, and we were in the green room. We were talking. And you talked about you had this aha moment in 2003. Take me from that to 2008. So what was this aha moment, and where did Triada come from?
Yeah. So I'll take a little bit step back before then. So when we were I was at the investment firm before I started Triada. The company I worked for, my first IT job, starting in 95. We were acquired twice. So we became now part of a larger organization. It was about 5,000 employees at that point, whereas the original company was 200 employees just in New York. So 5,000 employees worldwide, IT headquarters out of Texas. At that point, I was running infrastructure for the group. Almost. I think I may have been the help desk manager. So we started, we were starting to connect into the internet. And so I started building out these beginnings of a security practice and program within the office, first firewall, first connection to email, to pull down email, all these things we were kind of building along the way. So I was really intricately involved in that. And I did a lot of that work. And then when we got acquired by this other larger firm, I was involved in the new information security teams before it was called cybersecurity. So that was kind of like we were still learning what is cybersecurity or what does information security mean for an investment firm. It was very compliance focused, but we were also looking at, what do we do to protect ourselves from potential malicious attack. We started like before. Now we have something called a common vulnerability database that we can look up CVEs. These are numbers where standardization. One of my colleagues in the company actually built a version of that for ourselves because that thing didn't exist yet. So we were collecting vulnerability information and keeping track of it. So we were in the middle of building a program. So fast forward 2003, we get a call early morning. That there's a person got a pop-up on their computer. So one of my help desk technicians runs over to the desk to go see what's going on, get another call, another pop-up. So what was happening was there was a worm, which is basically a virus that can jump from machine to machine, moving its way through the network. And the virus would attack web servers. Now, if it was attacking web servers, why is it popping up on these computers? Well, there was a point of time that Microsoft was by default enabling web servers on desktops. Why? Lord knows. But that was what it was. And so and because we didn't really know any better, it's not like we were going through like a hardening process, removing services that we didn't need and that kind of thing. All these computers were susceptible. And so this worm was just wrapping through. The good news was that it wasn't really doing any damage, but it was very quickly moving through the entire network. So within a couple of hours, we basically had to disconnect these computers from the network as they got infected so that we can clean them up, so we can contain what was happening. This was the Code Red virus. If you look up the Code Red virus, this is what was going on. The reason it was Code Red, it was the Mountain Dew had a new flavor called Code Red at the time. And I guess the virus writer really liked that flavor. And so he had that embedded in the code somewhere.
Oh my goodness.
So the Code Red, this fascinated me. It's like, A, why did somebody write this thing? And B, how did he figure this out? Like, why did he go through this? And how could we stop it? Like, these were the things that were kind of running through my head. And that was the aha moment. It's like, this is really interesting. This is really cool. I like this kind of, now we call it threat hunting, but it's, that aspect of kind of understanding why these things happen and how we can prevent it. And that kind of got me deeper into the cybersecurity track. So fast forward to 2008. So right prior to 2008, I left that large company to help a small investment company start up. I was a manager from that firm. He had started a company after his non-compete was up, and he asked me to come join him. So I got to build now a company's infrastructure from the ground up. Instead of dealing with legacy stuff, like I started from zero, nice. Which I thought was really fascinating and cool, that I could basically create this in my own image, so to speak. And so modern tools, modern solutions. And because I had, at that point with the larger firm, I had made a lot of connections in Silicon Valley with these emerging cybersecurity companies, because they were looking for investments. The investment groups would ask us for our feedback, our market viability. So I got involved with a lot of these companies. So there was one of those early ones was one that's, a couple that are pretty well known now. They've gotten the giant firms. Mm-hmm. But at that time they were scrappy. They just wanted to get businesses. They just wanted to get logos. And so I was able to get all this gear and software for cheap or nothing, because they just wanted to get it installed and be able to use it. So so FireEye was like one of those companies, and that was early on that we were able to get like one of their early appliances before they actually were just doing software, these really early appliances. And so it allowed me to play around with a lot of these things. So the negative of this is that that triggered my shiny object, right? Now that continued going forward. But then I had to pay for it.
Sure,
at this point, I didn't have to pay for it, and I only had to do it for one small company. Whereas now, doing it at a scale, it becomes a little bit different. Anyway, so when I left in 2008, I saw an opportunity with a couple other with the crashing of the financial system, and a lot of folks were leaving the large investment companies and starting their own funds. Okay. They still needed help setting up. They still needed help with infrastructure. They still help with compliance. And as a result of that, needed help with cybersecurity. So we started basically at that point, that's when we spun out and started Triada, my wife and I, to kind of service these small funds that were starting out.
I see.
And that was the impotence. And that was kind of the genesis of what we were doing. But we didn't know what a managed service provider was or what we were supposed to be doing. We basically figured out, we were their outsourced IT department, and we were just building these little IT organizations within the firm, all run by me. Like I was splitting my time. You can call me like a fractional IT manager, and I would fractionally work around. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we built that. But I learned about our world and the tools that were available to us, fairly quickly through groups, industry groups like ASCII and what have you. And that's kind of how we built and started our company. So Triada was Triada means Trinity in Greek. And the reason why I picked a Greek word was that the Armenian word for triada is yerortuchun, which would be really hard for most people to pronounce. Triada was a lot more easier for folks to grasp and solve, and so it wasn't. It was available. We kind of and we launched on it, and that's kind of what we latched onto, and so that's been us since then. That's where it came from.
Wonderful. And your wife, obviously, you said your wife and I started Triada. So your wife was obviously standing with you and behind you on going out on your own or creating your own company.
Yeah, I couldn't have made. There was no way that I was going to be able to make this decision and move off without the complete support of my wife. I mean, if you look at where we were in our life, so 2008, we were. We had 4 kids at that point. My youngest was 4 years old. So 4, 8, 10, and 12. So 4 little kids.
Yeah.
About to enter probably the most expensive part of their lives. And I was like, and I was the sole breadwinner at that point. My wife obviously had her hands full with the 4 of them.
Sure.
So we didn't have so because of that, it had to be very specific about what we were doing. But we knew that I could have at that point gone back to a larger corporation and I'm sure found employment, because there was no way a small company that only had 10, 15 employees would be able to afford somebody like us long term. So I could have done that, or we could have said, all right, this is the time that we can actually build something, because we have this opportunity. We have this company that is asking for help, and there's another one around the corner. So these 3. Could we supplement? Can we create our income with these 3 companies? And we figured that we could, and said, all right, so this is now the start. This is the start of something. And she was very keen on a business that we could have that could provide a future for not only us, but potentially the next generation, our family. So this was a conscious decision by both of us to move forward. And without her, there was no way that this was going to happen, because she had to be an integral part of what we did. So that's,
No, it's wonderful that you had that kind of that relationship and that kind of support, supporting each other and doing that. Because I'm just trying to remind myself, like, what was that conversation like? Going, hey, I think I'm going to do this thing. Like, you're crazy, or no, that's like a great idea. Let's do this, right? Even though it's scary as hell, And
my parents thought we were crazy. I mean, my mom and dad, who were my, if you want to call it business mentors at that point, they're like, yeah, why do you want to do this? Like, this is, have you seen what we've gone through running companies? Like, this is not, are you sure you want to do this? But we were pretty, I guess at that point, we were pretty convinced that we were not making ourselves any better off by working for somebody else, I guess, at that point. And I think we probably just needed to wait a little bit longer. It would have been fine, but it was definitely a more long-term kind of long-term decision. And maybe this is kind of an old world thinking a little bit, is that we're thinking about the people right behind us, not just ourselves in that sense.
Sure.
And so it's a little bit bigger than yourself. If we were thinking about just ourselves, sure, I could have stayed in corporate. I saw my friends that stayed in that company and then went to other companies that are doing really well for themselves. Not that I'm jealous, a little bit maybe, but that was the decision that they made, and so this was definitely something that we. And this is not an easy city to start and run a company with,
I could imagine.
I used to think like there was something weird about. I mean, I think every area has its challenges, and I think whether you're in an area that is maybe less populated, you have that issue where and people look at New York and say, oh, you can throw a rock and you hit a company that could be a potential customer, and that's true. But there's also
a competitor beside them.
What's that?
A competitor beside it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're also hitting a competitor along while you're throwing that rock. So there are all of those things. And then, when it comes to talent, something that we haven't really talked about, it's not easy to find competitive talent when you have these large companies with very deep pockets, hiring them too. You're offering a very unique experience that they wouldn't get at if they went to go work for Chase or Goldman Sachs or something like that. And that's kind of what we're trying to go for here. And so far that part of it has been successful.
Good. And then I think when I look at my own business and whether it's talking with a prospect or whatever, but not only we're talking about the talent, but even what you offer, the different experience working with someone of our sizes and organizations. It's more of a boutique experience. It's a little bit more of an intimate type of experience than obviously one of the large national, global, whatever type organizations, right? So
totally. Totally.
Now, earlier I touched on I guess the introduction mentioned U.S. Secret Service and FBI and CompTIA and Cybersecurity. I mean, just wow. How did you ever get involved with these organizations? Like, where did that come about?
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of like how did I get involved with when I heard about, so the U.S. Secret Service had actually, I joined InfraGard when I was still in corporate.
Okay.
And when I was in the corporate world, the InfraGard, actually both, now that I think about it. So InfraGard had they're a joint task force between the FBI and private sector, similar. The Cybersecurity Task Force, which used to be called something else, the Electronic Crimes Task Force, was a joint effort between the Secret Service and private entities. Whereas the FBI is more broad, the Secret Service specifically went after financial crime. And because I was in the investment world, it was a great way for us to get threat intelligence of what was going on. Early on with the Electronic Crime Task Force, it was mostly about card fraud and things like that, more that retail-oriented finance, less so investment fraud. But then that kind of morphed a little bit. And then they broader went after financial crime. So I'm jumping around there. Secret Service is part of the U.S. Treasury. And because of that, they're responsible for financial crime. FBI is responsible for broader crime across the country and even internationally, as internationally you come in. So being involved in these two groups gives us a little bit of advanced knowledge. And more importantly, the knowledge stuff is at this point, you can probably see most everything fairly quickly online, and that's available to us. The most important thing is you now have people in your Rolodex that you can contact. So now, like within my contacts, if something happens at a customer or a prospect or whatever, I can connect them to a guy in the NYPD that runs cybercrime, or a local U.S. Secret Service agent, or the FBI field office. And I encourage people, if you haven't talked to somebody or your provider isn't talking to somebody in any of those groups, definitely reach out to somebody in your closest field office. We're very fortunate with the U.S. Secret Service has both an office in New Jersey and New York that we can interact with. And we've become friendly with the special agents in both of those groups. And every quarter we get together. One company, usually a large company or a school, will sponsor the meeting, and we go and we listen to them. Then we have peers that also present at these meetings. Mm-hmm. And it's also a massive networking opportunity to meet other people that are in this world. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I got involved with that aspect of it. So it gives us, I don't know if it gives us an edge business wise, but I know that if something goes bump in the night, even on a personal level, like we've had this happen before, I called my friend that's in the NYPD cybercrime group, and he, gave me some good insights on certain things. So that level of interaction with people is massive. It's the same reason why it's kind of the same reason why I'm still involved with CompTIA so much. So CompTIA, most people know, is a certification organization. So if you're a technical person, you're getting certified, you go to CompTIA to get certified. CompTIA also has a membership organization that businesses are part of. And the businesses that are typically part of it are IT service providers like ourselves, right, but also vendors. And so what it allows us to do is within these communities is work with side by side with other peers and vendors without their hats, essentially. They take their hat off at the door and we talk about industry related stuff and issues. And now we're working side by side, little guy here from New Jersey working side by side with giant cybersecurity organization out of wherever. Mm-hmm. And so together we can solve these problems. And not only that, is because of that, we can have a little bit of influence on that. And that's similar to the same concept of the FBI and U.S. Secret Service. Now I have people that I can call. So if I do work with this vendor or not, I have somebody that I can contact that's in that group, in that large organization, that I could have some influence or get some assistance from. So these industry groups for me have been massive because as a smaller firm that, the dollars maybe don't show my influence necessarily. Through these kind of interactions, I can have that a little bit of influence to do that. So it helps us get better pricing sometimes. It helps us get better access to engineering staff, to developers, and it's been very good for a company like ours to move forward that way.
Wonderful. Yeah, so relationships are everything, and having those relationships, those contacts, and those people to reach out to, I'm sure are very valuable, especially to your business and your clients. So
I believe
something that I did not, in the beginning, I did not say, but those are my original notes, and somehow they got edited out. 2 books, correct?
2 books.
You helped co-author or contributor of 2 books.
Yeah, I was contributor on 2 books.
Amazon bestsellers.
Both Amazon bestsellers.
Congratulations. That's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have one sitting here. I have like 10 copies. I give them to clients, but one of them was on Thin Ice. I remember that title.
Yes, on Thin Ice. It's, I think, right there. I'm still waiting for my copies of the second book, but on Thin Ice, we talk about the subject of frameworks and using a framework to figure out what your security program is, and how to pick a framework. What are the frameworks that are out there? That kind of thing. It's more of like a little bit of a short primer on security frameworks.
And if I remember, that was written for and intended for business owners, though, correct? That was kind of
correct. It's not a technical, writing for sure. Second one, same thing. The second book. Now the title is kind of blanking on me. I think it's like "You Will Be Hacked" or something like that. Our chapter on that is talking about threat actors and what threat actors and why is it important to understand who the threat actors are. It's not so much who. Sure, I'll give you the synopsis. It's not so much who, it's what they do. So if you are in if you work with manufacturing companies or you're a manufacturing company, it's important to understand not specifically who the threat actors are that are attacking manufacturing companies, but what sort of tactics that they use. And there are patterns that develop. And because of those patterns that develop, you can figure out like what are your protections should be in place in order to help lower your risk associated with that. Because we work with investment companies, we look at, yes, the nation state actors, because there's some aspect of that go after financial businesses, but also the financial crime organizations, and figure out what their tactics are. So in that short writing, we talk about, what are the current active groups that are out there, and what can we learn from those groups, and how to protect ourselves from them.
Very cool. Wonderful. And out of that, obviously the opportunity to participate in something like that, what did you find most challenging in contributing to two bestseller books?
The challenge was really taking, when you write something like that, you're either writing something really short and distinct to the point where it's like a blog post and doesn't really get into any depth, or it's very easy to write something very long. And when you're dealing with a collaboration, if you're doing your own book, it's one thing, but when you're doing a collaboration, it has to almost like fit in the middle. It has to have more substance than just a blog post, but it has to have. It can't be too much where you're now taking up a whole lot of room in the book, because there's only so many pages within the collaborative framework. Okay. So having that was an interesting process to kind of, all right, I started out with something. It's funny because I hit both sides of it. I started out with something that was really too light. Then I built it out and it became too big. And so then it was a matter of editing it down to getting it to a point. And look, if you ask my English teachers in high school, if most likely to write a book, Raffi ain't one of those people. And so it's definitely that. And certainly my mom wouldn't have expected me to be a writer. But it was actually a fun process to actually learn about that. And so I did a little bit of education about it. There's a pretty well-known business author who happens to live not too far from me.
Nice.
Mike Michalowicz.
Oh, yeah.
Who wrote Profit First. And so he doesn't live too far from me. So during COVID, it was actually at the tail end of it, he put on a book writing workshop out of his office. And it was not so much the writing part of it. It was more the marketing and other parts of all the other things you can do around writing the book. There was some writing aspect of it too. His, not his ghostwriter, but his co-writer was also part of that. And it was really fascinating. Like I really, really enjoyed that, the other parts of it. And it made writing by itself less onerous. Where I always, I'm one of these people that stares at a blank screen or a blank page and tries to figure out what I'm going to do. And that thinking, that process that I went through really helped me with the second chapter, because by then I had done this one, the first one, but that helped me with this second book that just was released recently. So it was interesting. The book writing thing is an interesting thing. I'd like to do one on my own.
Well, that was my next question. Would you consider doing one on your own? Right. So
yeah, I'd like to do one. I'd like to do one on my own. I know I have a couple of friends that want to do something that together for more like starting a career in IT kind of thing, more of like a grassroots thing for younger people. That might happen, but yeah, I still wanted to, and I would actually, I wish I was more creative, because I'd write something more fiction oriented in the cybersecurity world. I think of I don't know if you've read any of these books like Damien, or the guy who wrote the system internal tools that sold to Microsoft. He wrote a book that was really interesting, kind of like a cyber thriller. Huh. I wish I had that creativity to do something like that. But I think I have at least one solo book in me. It is definitely a goal of mine to get that done. But it's still staring at a blank page.
No, well, and again, I'm one of those. I would like to say yes. I'm going to stare at a blank page as well. I also believe that we have the creativity in us. We just need to unlock it, right?
Fair.
And getting to that point. And obviously, you said the workshop you worked with Mike McCallowitz. Yeah, I struggle with his name. He obviously that helped move that aspect forward for you, made it maybe it's a little simpler, which is great.
It became a lot more, I guess, accessible to me.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so what do you think? 5 years? Within 5 years, you're going to do your own book?
I hope it doesn't take me that long.
All right. Well, hey, then great. I'll see you in 2.
I hope it doesn't take me that long. I'd like, I'd like to finish it this year if I can.
Wow.
Whether we release this year or not, I'd like to finish it this year if I can.
Well, I know I'd be excited to read it. I'll buy a dozen copies.
I'll send you a dozen copies.
Oh, goodness. So,
Nice.
the book thing just got me lost. Today, you are Triada Networks. My understanding is you are continuing to grow. You've set some new goals for your moving forward. Not looking at exiting or retiring anytime soon, right? I mean, you're going to be in this for the long haul.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. We're looking at how our boys can get more involved, and if they wish, there seems to be a little bit more interest in that.
Okay.
I think part of that is also will probably expand the scope of what Triada does, or spin off something else that expands the things that we'll be doing together beyond what our traditional solutions have been. We've been a traditional IT services company with a little bit of a security overlay, where we may, with the talents that we have with the boys, maybe we take that in, I wouldn't say a different direction, but expand the direction a little bit, where there's some other things that we can do that make Triada differentiate us in our giant lake of New York that we're in, and that's kind of where we're starting to think about what we can do in the future.
Sure. So you talked about, obviously, bookkeeping was one aspect, the financial aspect, but what was, I guess, in my mind, what was one of the largest challenges that you've experienced in, let's say even in the past 5 years, that you have overcame, and how did that impact things?
I wouldn't say I overcame it. I would say I'm overcoming it.
Okay.
And certainly clarity around our numbers has been one of them. I think and we're getting better, where we have a tendency with small companies that you look at your bank statements and that's how you run your company, right? You say, all right, I have cash, I spend cash. I don't have cash, I don't spend cash. I figure out how to get more cash, Whereas in a quote unquote real business, you're looking at all of the money flows, potential money flows, money that you're expecting, where it's going, how it's allocated, etc. And I think we had a rough idea, we had good, it's funny, we had good structure, I think, but the bank accounts never reflected that reality.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, money in your pocket is your real reality. And so getting those to get closer to each other has been probably our biggest challenge, and understanding where the bucket is leaking. and where can we plug up those holes, or identify where we can make adjustments. And so that's helped a lot. So and you have to get really, the problem is that funny enough, I'm one of the few engineers that's probably not super detail oriented. So I tend to still kind of hover above the surface on things. I'd rather have people do those things and then tell me, as opposed to, say, my brother-in-law, who is a very successful business owner. He's very detailed when it comes to his numbers, and learning from him, like how he goes after and understands every little bit of that. Seeing how he operates has also affected kind of what we're operating. So we're looking at. So I'll use a really mundane example. Looking through bank statements this past 2 weeks, and we noticed that there's been a Microsoft charge on our credit card for like $11 every month going back. All right, it's $11. Like, is that really harming you? At the end of the day, it's probably something you needed, maybe. But I'm now to the point where it's like, I want to know where every penny is going to. So like, if that means that that's $11 that is either coming out of my pocket, or is should be maybe something that we're charging a client for that we're not charging a client. Right. And so getting to those details, and getting that mentality getting to that detail has been kind of a mental shift for me. Okay. So now, whereas before I wouldn't look at bank statements or credit card transactions, I say, well, I just look at my QuickBooks statements. It's not the same. You need to look at both. You need to look at your QuickBooks stuff too. You still need to look at your general ledger and understand kind of the trends and the overall structures and the big numbers. But you have to look at the details too. And that's been a big change for us.
Now, do you think that you said the $11, and I get it's $11. Okay. Do you believe that as business owners that's wearing multiple hats, and obviously we're busy, that sometimes that $11 we just push off because there's bigger dollars that we're focused on? You know, there's bigger things, that we're dealing with. Like, okay, I would like to know what that $11 is, but I'm more worried about the $1,100 over here. Right. That I'm focusing on, and those little things do add up. Right.
Yeah, totally. And that's the problem is that, and that was exactly my mentality. It's like, really, are we really going to worry about this when, we're averaging X thousands of dollars per client every month? Like, am I going to be worried about $11? That's exactly that was exactly where my thinking was. And now I shifted, like, I want to know every little thing. And so same thing when it came to negotiation with vendors. Like, you would think somebody from the Middle East, tends to, we go to the bazaar and we negotiate everything. Like, I have been apparently I've been a good negotiator only just because I'm mostly friendly. People tend to, vendors tend to like me, and they do business with me. So they'll give me a good deal from the get-go, but I don't squeeze them for every dollar. And maybe that's helped out in some areas because they've become more, and and when I compare my pricing with other people, we tend to do okay. But everything's on the table now. Mm-hmm. It's a different world now. It's, I'm 15 years in, I have enough experience. I work with enough people. There's enough opportunity out there that I don't need to buy the thing that you're buying, that you're selling. I can find somebody else or find another way. Right. That conscious shift has taken place in me. And this little example was kind of more of a catalyst for that, saying like, all right, Microsoft is not somebody I'm negotiating with, but they don't need any one more dollar. They're not giving me anything.
Right.
It's not like we're making tons of money off of their selling their products.
Right.
We barely break even. I'm not going to let that be a leak in my bucket.
No. Very, very, very good. I mean, and yes, being mindful of those dollars. So as we wrap this up and bring this home, Raffi, what's one piece of advice that you would give, or you felt was important to give to someone, the Raffi in 2008 that was starting Triada Networks?
Oh, wow. Okay. So when I had a little bit more and darker hair, what would I say to that guy? I'm not sure I would say anything specific. Like I can't, I definitely made mistakes along the way. We'd be on this call for another couple hours if I rattled off all the mistakes. The one thing I would say is and this goes with, and it really stems from, it could be your marketing, it could be your sales, it could be your finances. Be a master of and control of all of the aspects of your business. I'm not saying go do everything yourself. That's definitely not in my vocabulary, but it's understand what is going on and control the direction of any of those things. Because when we've given up, when we've advocated control and advocated strategy in any of these areas, that's when we've screwed up. Whether that's outsourcing, full outsource marketing, not saying don't use an agency or anything like that, but when we've outsourced marketing, we failed. When we've outsourced sales, we failed. Again, not saying you don't outsource parts of it, but control the process and control the strategy. And the same thing with our finances. When we didn't understand you don't get into the detail of all the things that are going on in your finances, these are things that happen and you end up having leaks. So this is if I was going to take a kind of a broad stroke across, the past 15 years, don't be a bystander to your own timeline in your process, your success, because that's ultimately by being involved, asking the right questions, you're going to be, that's going to be where you're going to make the most effect on your life. Sorry about the beeping.
No, thank you. Sound advice. I appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing that with the 2008 Raffi. A lot of this is sharing that with others, right? And even with doing the podcast, it's who am I creating it for? Well, I'm really creating it for the younger me, right? Because we have so much information we can share through our experiences, through our trials, through our errors, right? It's we're living and learning, and sharing that with others is definitely important. So, Raffi, once again, sir, thank you for joining us today.
Marc, really appreciate it.
All right. Until next time.
Good to be with you, brother.
All right. Bye, friend.